point of view.
There's no place to go to report it.
No. When I was first in the Sierra, I think I was still 14, one of the long-term staff members named David Rousseau, he's been in the Sierra since pretty much the beginning of the Sierra.
I know DR.
Yeah. He slapped me on the butt. He said, "How you doing?" or something like that. And I was like, oh my God, but there's nothing I could do. He was an officer with rank. I had to call him sir. And there was nothing I could do about it. And I was 14 years old, and he's like smacking my butt. And then later on, a couple years later, there's a man named Jeff Porter, who's the Security Chief International, and he is a very angry person. And several times he just like yelled and screamed at me. I was terrified of this person. One day he came and told me to do something. He told me I had to get a bunch of staff to do security for an event. That wasn't my job. So he came back a few hours later. He said, "Did you do it?" And I said, "Well, you know, it's really not my job." He held me up against a wall, screamed at me. He was right here in my face, screaming and swearing and spitting in my face and holding me up against the wall. Then I complained to the staff chaplain. All the staff chaplain did was sit us down in a room and say what happened, and I told my story, and Jeff Porter said, "She didn't do this, I ordered her to do it," and it just went nowhere, and it was dropped. And
yet we're always Scientology staff members are always, and all Scientologists are always told, you have to handle it within the organization.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go, the worst thing a Scientologist can do is to go outside the organization to handle anything.
I couldn't even tell my dad, let alone the authorities, you know. I would have been in huge trouble for saying to my dad or saying to anybody.
Right, and yet within the organization there's no place to go.
Right.
There's no recourse.
Yeah. I mean, you can write reports, but you got to be careful how you word them.
Because you'll get in more trouble than the person you're
One
reporting.
girl wrote a report. A friend of mine, a mission was fired in, and a mission's fired in when an organization supposedly isn't doing well. Then they send people from a higher organization in to handle, and then everyone in the organization is in ethics trouble. They're all made to work late, etc. It's like this, you know, terrorization thing. She didn't agree with something one of the people on the mission did. She wrote a report on it. She went to the RPF, the Rehabilitation Project Force, immediately.
Just for that?
A year later, they said, "Oh, that was a mistake," and they let her off. And she then got pregnant and left. But that's like the kind of stuff that could happen, so you had to be really careful. Like, you couldn't dare write a report on a senior executive.
And yet policy says...
Yeah, and I did once write a report because for the year before I left, I was in data, and I was in charge of the statistics. My senior...
And data is one of the departments, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all for... They make a copy of every letter that comes into the organization and put it in the computer. That means personal letters, any letters. Every letter that comes in gets opened and put in the computer, a copy of it, and people can read it. My direct senior's name, he was like my boss right over me, his name was Wayne Furness. He didn't like me. As soon as I started working there, he didn't like me. I had a friend there, and we worked together, and one day he started calling us lesbians for absolutely no reason. He's like, "You guys are lesbians," and for the next few weeks, every time he saw us, he referred to us as lesbians. And I kept telling him, "Don't do that, it's not okay," you know? And he wouldn't stop. He thought it was really funny. So I finally did report it. I reported it to his senior, and he did get in trouble for it. She told him, "You can't call her a lesbian, don't do that anymore." So for the rest of the year that I worked there, he called me every other name other than a lesbian. He called me, he said, okay, first he started off saying I had soft skin. And there were about 10 other people in the department, or about 8, and he told all of them I had soft skin, and it became a big joke. Astra has soft skin, she can't take being teased. Then he called me two-ton Tessie for no reason, because I'm not overweight, but he decided to call me two-ton Tessie. He'd just come up with names to call me and come up with arguments. And every time I would get upset, he would say, "You're getting upset because of your overts and withholds, go to ethics."
And your soft skin.
I couldn't do anything about it because in our department we were producing a lot and our statistics were going up. And the policy is that if your statistics are up, you can't get in trouble. So he couldn't get in trouble for it.
Mm-hmm.
And someone finally did an investigation where they asked questions about it, because I got really upset about it, but nothing was done. So he continued to the day I left, making fun of me and calling me names. And there was nothing I could do. I would cry, I would get upset, and then he got the other staff to agree with him and call me names. So he would say, oh, two-ton sissy, and I'd say, don't call me that. And then the other staff would go, you have soft skin, you know?
I just want to add that being like a lesbian or gay in the church, or especially in the Sea Org, is considered a really bad thing.
Yeah.
Like, you're considered, you're sexually weird, and you must have done horrible things to now, you know, have changed yourself so weirdly to become gay. So it wasn't only like that you weren't gay, it was like that it put such a horrible
very
label.
bad
It was a
name.
very bad name to
Yeah.
be called, because everyone looked at you like, oh my God, could she be gay?
Yeah. You have to write up your whole life history information, and a lot of people have access to that, and your senior would have access to that. It implied, even
That
though
he
I
had seen
didn't,
something.
it implied that he had seen something, he knew something about my prior history. Because you write up your life history, you go in session, you write up your overts and withholds. These go in your ethics file, they go in your personnel file, and they go in your PC file. People have access to these. Anyone pretty much can read them. They're not kept locked up, hardly. Some of them are, but anyone. Your senior can get into any of them. People from ethics can get into any of them, and anyone senior to you can get into any of them and read any of them. They can go into your PC folder and read your most intimate thoughts that you told your auditor that are supposed to be kept confidential.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there was nothing I could do about him. So I just kind of lived with it, and that drove me crazy for a year. I was just being insulted, made fun of, and harassed for no reason, and there was nothing I could do.